Did you listen to the radio when you were a child?
Yes, the radio was our number one form of recreation. Radio was imagination. Um, I was very disappointed when I saw Superman on screen because in my mind, his shoulders were that big and a waist this big. And when I saw him, he was this little guy, and I said, are they kidding? Yes, we had all of the favorites that are no longer on radio, but the Fat Man, the Thin Man, Superman, Green Hornet, all of these shows I listened to. In fact, this is really where I started saying that I wanted to be in radio.
And how old were you about that?
At that time, I was about 15. I just entered high school, and I said I wanted to go into radio. My counselor told me that I couldn't go into radio. I said, well, I wanted
high school counselor.
High school counselor. I wanted to take public speaking. They wouldn't allow me to take public speaking because years later I discovered they felt it was for my own good. Take public speaking, and then when I get out of school, there was no place to use it. So
because of a racial...
Yes. So they told me to take auto shop. But public speaking was what I wanted, and for that reason I used to go into vacant lots, take the newspaper, read aloud for elocution and diction, and when given the opportunity, I started hanging around the radio stations, and the fellows would tolerate me. People like Knox Manning doing their Coast to Coast show, Don Amici. These people, what's his name, used to play Sam Spade. They would let me sit in the studios with them while they were doing their shows.
You were the only African American?
Yes, I was the only person.
Only person?
Yes, I was the only person. I ended up lecturing to, I'm so bad with names.
That's okay.
The gentleman that did Dragnet.
Yes, yes. Now I can't think of his name. Jack something?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, when he was trying to get started, he was teaching radio in Hollywood, and I was on radio, and he asked me to come and lecture to his class. Jack Webb.
Jack Webb, yes.
And his wife, Julie London, we became very, very good friends. Because I used to play her records on the air, and she just kind of
wonderful performer.
Took a liking to me. And when she first went to New York to do her first engagement, she invited me there to be her guest, and she was working in this bar, and I've forgotten the name. And this gentleman came up and said, we were sitting there together, and he acted like I wasn't there. And she continued to talk to me, and he says, you don't know who I am, do you? And she said, no. So he told her who he was. He was a very big name in the automotive industry. And he said, I'm worth $7 million. And she said, well, my name is Julie London, but my married name is Julie London Webb, and I'm worth $10 million. Now, would you leave me alone so we could finish our conversation? And he just kind of sucked off, you know.
Good for her.
I thought, my chest went out, you know. I felt so great. But in high school, that's where I decided that I wanted to go into radio. But in those days, you were told or encouraged to get one of those good civil service jobs, like on the post office department.
Was this because of your blackness?
Yes.
Yes.
Or to if you were not in college, to get a civil service job, or because that gave you a certain amount of security, or to go to work at the train station as a red cap. Those were the jobs where you went to work in private family as a chauffeur or a valet. Well, none of those jobs appealed to me, and I wanted to try to do better. And then there was one gentleman by the name of Al Jarvis, the first disc jockey in the world. And he had a show that started quite accidentally. KFWB, which was owned by Warner Brothers Pictures, had this small independent radio station, and yet still they had plunged money in it like crazy. They had the big Wurlitzer organs in every studio. Every day they had a concert, half hour, with a symphony orchestra that, like it was about 78-piece symphony orchestra, unheard of for a small station. But they had it. But one day they had technical difficulties, and they told the staff announcer, Al Jarvis, to do something, talk or play some records, and he did, and it became a hit. And they kept the show on the air, and they called it the Make-Believe Ballroom.
So that was the beginning of a disc jockey.
That's right.
Profession.
That's right. And the Make-Believe Ballroom, Martin Block worked for him. I worked for him. He's the guy that nurtured and made Nat King Cole, because he would play his records and everything, and Lionel Hampton, Frankie Lane. And I went out there and I sat in his office for 8 days. And they finally said, okay, he'll see you, because they want to get rid of me. And he asked me why was I there, and I said, because they won't accept me in a radio school, and I would like to go into radio. And I would like to work for you. He said, well, I don't need anybody. I said, you need me. He said, no, I don't. I said, yes, you do, because I'll work for free. Well, I could go to Lockheed and work for $50 a week. The Depression was subsiding and what have you. So he said, well, let me think about it, and called me a couple of days later, and I went to work for him. And he said, I won't let you work for free. I'll pay you $20 a week, and you drive me to the studio, and you live in a villa next to mine at the Garden of Allah. This is where the top stars lived.
Oh, my.
And the only problem I had there is the maids didn't want to clean up my place. They didn't want to, you know.
Yes.
These were my maids.
Yes.
But they didn't
want to clean up behind another African American.
That's right.
Yes.
So I worked for him, and then one day he told me, after about 2 years, he said, Joe, you've got 2 weeks. And I said, what do you mean I've got 2 weeks? I'm living like a king. He said, you've got 2 weeks to go out on your own. He said, Mama Bird is pushing you out of the nest. He said, because if you work for me for the next 50 years, it'll still be Al Jarvis, the Make-Believe Ballroom, with Joe Adams. He said, get out on your own. And for a year, nothing happened.